Oh, dragons. The quintessential Dungeons and Dragons monster. But you're very rarely going to run into one of these things within an actual dungeon. The alliteration, I think, is worth the deception. Now, I was recently asked, how does one run dragons well? What do we do for dragons? Because we all know what they are: big, scaly, beastly monstrosities that breathe fire, lightning, poison, acid, and whatnot. But how does one actually make one interesting? Now, I'm a big believer in what is well done being interesting. A dragon, for example, is something run of the mill for most fantasy enjoyers, but I think far more interesting than, say, Cthulhu. Any dragon you give me will be more interesting than some unknowable god, because a dragon can have personality traits, goals, aspirations, and reasons for its evil machinations. Now, if you haven't already, do give me a like and a sub and follow me over on X at Lost Law Scholar, and let's dive into these majestic beasts, shall we? This majestic lady is Phaeolas, the Dragon Queen, a creation of mine. The artwork here done by Shandwich over on Twitch. She is an evolution of a previous Dungeons and Dragons villain that I ran for my group when they were going under Bravo Company. This version of Phaeolas is not so much a villain, but neither is she a hero. But it does play into something I want to emphasize. Dragons need to have story. They need to have a reason for why they are there, and they need to be well placed in the world. Allow me to read you just an excerpt here. The first, and closest to the northlands of Varfal, is the great dragon queen Phaelas. She was there at the Battle of Silver Fields and witnessed the great fall of the then monarch of all dragonkind, the red worm called Hephaestus. She was a young dragon in those days, and upon the death of her queen and the fulfillment of her oaths to aid the alliance of the Northlands, she tarried in the Silver Fields. Young, but shrewd, she eventually flew south into the Dragon Vale, named so for her watchful guarding of the land there. She came to nest within a great wood, which to all the world is now known as the realm of Phaelas, but which she and her subjects call Feodrel. That is a small snippet of lore that I have written for this character. You can find the rest at lostlawlibrary.com of Dragon Queen and the Wraith King is the blog post. But I think you'll agree that situating a character within the world immediately brings some grounding to the players. Grounding is always necessary in telling a story about a situation that they will then play within. But for our purposes, let's start a little bit more simple. This is going to be the dragon that we are going to create a villain around. The reason I recommend your villain be a green dragon, if you want to have an interesting little adventure arc, maybe not a whole campaign, is because green dragons are by far the superior dragon, and I say that as a man whose favorite color is red. The reason you wouldn't use a red dragon is because it's too brutish. It's too blunt force trauma. Green dragons are conniving, scheming, and will gladly use skullduggery to get what they want. So, here is our green dragon. And in fact, we're going to call her Faculas, which is the name I gave to her when the Bravo Company first encountered her. Her ambition is to create for herself a way to take on a human form and to also be worshipped as a queen of a local area. She will be a regional threat for a low to mid level party to take care of. She's a young dragon, not an adult dragon, but she will be buffed through spells, magical items, tactics, and allies. This is a very basic foundation for which this dragoness will be a thorn in the side of an entire region of play. Firstly, how does one introduce Fakelas here? The way I did it was the companions had done a small quest and were invited to be the guests of honor at a village festival. Fakalas turned up, used her poison breath on a bunch of commoners, and pronounced herself queen of the local area. She also batted down one or two party members, not killing them, but showing her superiority to them. They were level 2 or 3 at the time. Fakalas is probably going to be a difficult slay for a level 5 or 6 party if you play her well, and so she had no problem controlling the entire situation. Now, you might say, but you told us not to brute force a dragon. I did, and you're not. This is simply a power play for later schemes, because behind Fakalas, what comes marching in? Her minions. In my case, I used large green kobold type figures, which she had experimented upon within her forest home to make larger and scarier and to hit harder. Now, as she flies away after demanding tribute be delivered in a certain amount of time, the party has room to breathe and decide how they want to deal with this hook. Are they going to pay the tribute, or are they going to attempt to gather allies to fight back against the Dragoness? My ones wanted to fight back. They didn't do so great at gathering allies, they just went straight for the brute force approach, and, well, it went about as well as you expect. So, what should you do whilst Focallas has left the area for the time being? How does she expand her power base in opposition to the party? Quite simple. Wherever the party goes, there should be some influence of the Dragoness being felt. Her minions, her henchmen could be there in force, it could be a fight. But more likely, and a lot more compelling, is humanoid officials have been bribed, have been corrupted or hypnotized or put under a spell to become her subordinates. The party might find that quest rewards that were promised aren't paid, or maybe not paid in full, or a new tax has appeared that is going to a mysterious benefactor. That mysterious benefactor being the Dragoness's horde. I think you need to be clever with how her presence is felt. And the more she takes from the party in an indirect manner, the more they're going to want to put a stop to her shenanigans. And once they start trying to take down more prominent lieutenants, be they mutated kobolds or corrupt officials, or trying to break the spell on lords and nobles in the area that she may have brought under her sway magically, she's going to consider them more of a threat. And as they level up, gather loot, gather resources, she's going to want to end them. And that will culminate in a final fight. Now, the reason I've tried to be system agnostic with this is because I want this sort of character build to be more universalized than just Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. God forbid that it gets used in the new 2024 edition of D&D, but I can't stop you. Now, let's say Fakalas is confronting the party, or the party is confronting Fakalas. However it happens, she is not going to be alone. She's not going to be up front and in their face. She's going to use her flight. She's going to use her breath weapon, and she's most importantly going to use magic. All dragons are natural sorcerers, or so they should be. You're going to give your Dragoness here access to many illusory and enchantment spells. No direct damage spells, as far as you can help it anyway. Her entire thing should be turning party members against one another through hypnosis, or using actions which enable her to bring in more subordinates. She herself is going to try and sit away from the encounter, especially if this fight is happening in her lair. If this fight happens in Fakalas's lair, it should end in a wipe of the party, if you're doing it fairly. This Dragoness should be so paranoid about being approached within her woodland that there should be no way that a whole party is going to get to her. One or two party members should be picked off before the confrontation ever happens. If the confrontations happen outside of her lair, the party will have a better chance, although she can always just run away. But push comes to shove, the party is going to have to muscle its way through enchantments, illusions, and a lot of poison breath weapon damage. Not to mention, you should give her some magical items. A ring of protection, perhaps. Some healing potions, perhaps. Maybe a magical piece of armor that she wears around her finger like a ring, but is actually a bracer of some sort when equipped on a humanoid. Things that will give her a lot more survivability or can work as contingency plans to get her out of trouble when needed. Again, the entire point of this dragon is to control and manipulate, not to be a frontline fighter. This is something I find needs to be done more. Blue dragons and green dragons are best for this, red dragons not so much. But it's up to you. This is simply advice that I would give. This is how I run green dragons, as manipulative casters that try and assert themselves through multiple branches: political, magical, and yes, when they can, physical. Just remember, when running your dragon, it is a person, not just a mindless monster. It has desires, it has goals and ambitions, and it might be willing to work with the party rather than just fight them. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. If you enjoyed this, please do give me a like and subscribe and share this video around with your friends, because I just ramble about nerdy stuff and I've probably not done half of what I should have done in this video because it was just rambling at a desk.